Hello, it's Kathy Adams Clark, and welcome back to Photoshop Bridge CS6. Today I'm going to introduce you to Adobe Camera Raw. Now we're in Bridge right now, but when we double click on any of our photographs that are raw images, this is a CR2 so you can see it's a raw image. When we double click on that, we're going to open Adobe Camera Raw. If you happen to not be working in RAW or taking raw photographs, then all you have to do is right click and open in Camera Raw, and then you can open your JPEGs in Camera Raw. So I'm going to open this photograph, I'm going to double click on it, and it's going to open in Camera Raw. There is only one setup item that you have to do in Adobe Camera Raw, and that is right down here in this little what looks like hyperlink down underneath the photograph. The first time you use Adobe Camera Raw, you need to open this up, and if you're going to work in 16-bit, which I recommend you do because there's more colors, then you need to pull down this little drop-down menu and set it to 16-bit. Also, if you would like your final resolution of your photograph to be 300 pixels per inch right here, then you can change it to 300 pixels per inch right there. Now, why would you want 300 pixels per inch? If your final output is going to be publication, almost all the time, magazines are going to want your photographs at 300 pixels per inch. And so this is a way that you can uniformly set that if that's what you're looking for. If you don't need those 300 pixels per inch and your 240 coming out of your camera is adequate for what you're doing, then don't make a change. Also, color space, if you'd like to work in Adobe RGB or one of the other color spaces, this is your chance to set it. And once you set right here in this workflow options and click OK, then it stays that way, so every photograph you open up in Adobe Camera Raw automatically gets converted to Adobe RGB, 16-bit, 300 pixels per inch. So this is a nice little workflow tool that you can use so that all your photographs come out looking exactly the same or having the same characteristics. So I'm going to give you a quick little tour of Adobe Camera Raw, and then we're going to, in the next lesson, actually process some photographs. What you see up here is your histogram, and you know that you look at your histogram on the back of your camera. Then the histogram has the black corner right here and the white corner right here, and all of the other tones in the photograph are across the histogram. So your histogram from the back of your camera is shown right up here. We're going to process our photos using that histogram. Some aids to help you out are to click this little highlight clipping warning triangle. That's these red items right here. They're showing me that those areas are blown out in the whites, or meaning that when we print the photograph, there's not going to be any ink there. So we're completely blown out on the whites. You notice it's not much, but it's a little bit. We have a similar shadow clipping warning right here. You just click that little triangle. Once you do, it's always clicked. And this is showing us where any areas are totally black, having no details. And you notice there's a little bit of blue right down in this area, and this is showing me where I've got some blacks that are too black. I need to fix those. We're going to fix any red highlight clippings with our exposure slider, and we're going to fix any black shadow clippings with our black slider. So if you notice, I'm going to slide the black slider, and all of those blue areas down in here went away because we just fixed it in Photoshop. In my white areas, I could move this exposure slider down just a bit to get rid of these, but I know from past experience I'm not going to get rid of these. These are very bright lights, and as a result they're just blown out. Very small, so we're not going to worry about them. Other things that you can look for when we're in Adobe Camera Raw that we are going to use as we move around. We have a zoom tool right here, and there's my little zoom with a plus mark on it. All I have to do is simply just click, and we're zooming in on any of the areas in the photograph. If I click on my Option key in a Mac or my Alt key in a PC, then it moves to a negative symbol, and then I can just click back out to the full-size photograph. If I am enlarged in have the photograph enlarged, and I can do that again through just down here on this bottom, then I can move around in the photograph to look at detailed areas in the photograph by clicking on my hand tool right here. So I can click on that hand tool, click and drag, and that allows me to move around. Press this little button down here once again, go to Fit to View, and it pulls my picture up to full view. This is my white balance tool. We're going to use this later on. It's a great tool. This is my crop tool if I would like to crop the photograph. This is my straighten tool right here if I want to straighten the photograph. And if you notice in this photograph, these buildings are leaning just a hair. And so all I have to do is pull that tool down, move it along a straight line, and it cropped my photograph exactly like I want it. I'm going to show you red eye later on and some other things. This is an adjustment brush. I'll show you that later on. I can darken or lighten or add more saturation to just one area of the photograph. And this is called a graduated filter. This is wonderful because it has replaced the split neutral density filter that we use often out in the field. And then over on this side, we have white balance. We have exposure, that's this corner of the histogram. We have the black, that's this corner of the histogram. And then we can, everything else in here, contrast, highlights, shadows, and whites, is just simply to taste how you want your photograph to look. Clarity, about 40 or 50 is a nice place to set clarity. This is makes sharp edges look sharper. It's a little bit different than sharpening the photograph, but it just makes your photograph look a lot more crisp. Vibrance are the midtones of a photograph. Saturation are the rich tones of the photograph, like these pinks right in here. I personally kind of like vibrance to start out at about 10, and I like saturation to start out at about 10. Behind all of this are lots and lots and lots of tools. And so as we start processing photographs, we're going to come back in here and use these tools for a variety of different reasons. But for right now, that's just a slight tour of Adobe Camera Raw. And then we're going to come back in the next lesson and I'm actually going to process this photograph. So for now, I'm going to click Done, and that's going to save all of my information to my XMP file. And now my photograph in Adobe Bridge has this little tiny crop symbol, meaning I've cropped it. And then it also has this little tiny circle with the two arrows on it, and that means that I have processed it. You see that these images over here have the same thing. So come back for next lesson and I will show you how we actually process pictures in Adobe Camera Raw. I'm Kathy Adams Clark, and I look forward to having you in the next lesson. Thanks.